And welcome into To Your Health, back by popular demand. My two favorite podiatrists, Dr. Brian and Lashonda Kille. And it's Greenville Foot Care is the name of the company, but obviously you're both podiatrists. You work primarily in the Greenville area.
Correct.
And Brian, you're all over the place.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much all over the place, which is great. It's great. But, last time we were here, we got a lot of, people are finally realizing how important their feet are to them. We've always known that, but you've always known it. And I think people, especially as they age, they start to go, ooh, we've got all these pains and everything happening. A lot of times what's happening is because you're just going and buying a $12 pair of shoes and thinking that'll, especially for exercise. You can go to the discount store and get $12 shoes, but that doesn't work, does it?
Not necessarily. I mean, buying shoes doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So you can get away with not spending a whole lot of money. It's more important to focus on how the shoe fits.
Okay.
So there's a few things that you have to worry about when you're buying shoes. So one of the things is to make sure, of course, it's long enough for your foot. Okay. So some people have really long second toes or long third toes instead of a long big toe. So you want to measure from the longest toe to the heel to make sure that you're...
Okay, when you say measure, years ago when you went to a shoe store, a guy came up and he put your foot, and he did all that for you.
That's true.
Now, when you go to these places, sometimes you can find one of these little things.
Brannick device.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but you do need to use it then, don't you?
You should. And sometimes they
but you can measure it at home, can't you, with a ruler?
You could. But sometimes they have like a little mat with like little diagrams of feet, and then you just kind of see which one sizes up with your foot. You could use one of those.
Okay.
Or you could go based on how it is fitting. So one of the things that we do or tell patients to do is to put the shoe on, stand up, bend over, and press down with your thumb to see where the longest toe is touching the shoe.
On the front part of the shoe.
On the front part of the shoe.
Okay.
Right, and as a general rule, you should have about a half of your thumbnail between the longest toe and the end of the shoe.
Okay.
That is a general rule.
Okay. So that's like about 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah, something
a little bit more.
Maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. But at least it's gonna. In all cases though, your toe should not be touching the front.
Correct.
And I guess the interesting thing about shoes, it's kind of like when you buy a shirt or something. They're not all created equal.
Exactly.
They may say that it's an 11, but maybe in this shoe you need it to be a 10.5 or an 11.5.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and if you do have, well, first of all, most places you should be able to find a Brannick device. If you ask the sales associate, they should have one in the bag. But when you do measure, a couple of things. One, you have to be standing in order to measure.
Okay.
Because your foot length changes with weight bearing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and also, if your toe is touching the number, that's not your size. You go the next half size up.
Okay.
So you got to.
So if your toe hits 10. You should be pulling off 10.5 shoes,
right,
and then going through that same procedure,
right,
to make sure that you've done it right.
Right, and then you were correct on hitting with different shoe manufacturers. Of course, are a little bit different.
Okay, so then that's the length, but they also have a width of your foot, and that's probably just equally as important, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. The wrong width, if you're wearing too wide, your foot will piston in the shoe, which will jam that long toe into the end, leading eventually.
So you mean your foot's kind of sliding in the shoe,
right?
When
It slides back and forth, especially if you're running or doing higher aggressive activities.
Yeah.
Too short, of course, jams your toe up and starts to curl them in like this. So.
And this should be in all your shoes, whether it's a dress shoe, or it's a casual shoe or an athletic shoe.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Make sure all those component parts work together.
Right.
Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, you're like you say, you're gonna cause damage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And keep in mind that as you get older, your foot size can change. And we got lots of patients who come in and they're like, "Oh, I've been wearing a 10 for all my life." Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, they're an 11. Their arch collapses or something along those lines. Changes the shoe size when they're standing. So measuring your foot frequently is actually very important.
Okay. Then obviously, depending on the shoe, there's degrees of support on that shoe. Because we looked at the length, we looked at the width. Now, the foundation going underneath your foot is important. And should they be looking at an insert of some sort? Or, I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things I tell patients to do is when you see a shoe and you're thinking about getting that shoe, if you pick it up and squeeze the sides and it's really flimsy, that's not the shoe that you want. You want
Okay.
something that has more stiffness in the sides, or we call it the shoe counter.
Okay.
Also, you want to look for the thickness of the heel for shock absorption and cushion, because you don't want a flat, flimsy shoe. That's just
Right,
going to cause
right.
problems eventually.
Well, thank you guys. I'm going to get you come back next week because we want to look at some, if you don't do all this part right, what are some things that can cause us problems, okay? And we'll be right back right after this.